Welcome. This is the Kids Have Sun editorial board and candidates for the Bainbridge Island City Council. I believe you said Robert will let you introduce yourself first. So.
Okay. Do you want the full pitch or?
Go ahead. You have 3 minutes for what you'd like to say.
3 minutes. My name is Robert Dashiell. I'm running for City Council, Bainbridge Island South Ward. As an intro, I think I'll do a quick bio and discuss some of the jobs and experiences that might translate into being a productive member of the Bainbridge Island City Council. I was born in Spokane. My father was a 35-year road supervisor. Nobody on the City Council understands roads. They don't understand paving, they don't understand chip seal, they don't understand the economics. I would bring that blue-collar knowledge to the dais. I got an undergraduate degree at University of Washington Business. At 22 years old, I was qualified on nuclear submarines. That translates to the council that I have a detailed understanding of systems. You can't qualify in a submarine without having that. Trust and absolute teamwork. Got an MBA out of Michigan State University. I went on for another MBA from the University of Washington under the Executive MBA program. I spent 4 years in the Navy as a Navy Inspector General, focus on waste, fraud, and abuse. That translates into council credibility with having skills of auditing. I was a 12-year contractor, and I can analyze problems quickly. My last assignment in the military was Deputy Commander, U.S. Naval Forces, Saudi Arabia. I was a Desert Storm combat veteran, survived 22 Scud incoming missiles. I worked on General Schwarzkopf's logistics team. I was in country when the war started, pressure decisions, and a teamwork with 22 nations. After 24 years, I retired from the military. I moved to Bainbridge Island for the second time. I've been on Bainbridge Island for 15 years. I've had multiple job offers, mostly from consulting and investment firms. I decided time was more valuable than money, and so I retired at age 46. I traveled. I took 5 trips around the world. I've co-owned a 1,200-acre Eastern Washington farm. I've worked on National Geographic books. I'm a photographer. I've coached youth soccer. I've got 10 years volunteering at Islandwood, giving public tours. I've given approximately 125 public tours. I like to garden. I have a garden, had my garden on the Bainbridge and Bloom Garden Tour. I volunteered for Bainbridge Island Television for years, ended up being an employee there. I got interested in how the city works. I've attended some 400 plus city meetings. I prefer to work behind the scenes, and I'll take substantial credit for some of the things that I've done. I was probably the instigator for the establishment of a biennial budget. We used to go hours into the night talking about budgets for 4 months, and I made a pitch to the Finance Committee and to the City Councilors and got that solved. I'm self-financing. I take no money. If elected, I want to feel no obligations to any organization or individual.
Sarah.
Okay, I'm Sarah Blossom. I'm 34 years old. I grew up on Bainbridge. I was born there. Fifth generation on both sides of my family. My mother's family is in Eagledale, which is on the south end, and we're still there on the same property that was purchased in the 1890s. And my father's family established Linwood Center, which is also on the south end. I went to Seattle University and got a bachelor's degree in business administration and majored in accounting. And then I went on to law school at Seattle University School of Law and got my law degree in 2003. So I worked as an attorney. Part-time, it wasn't the most fulfilling job for me. I like to kind of meet people and change things up. So I also worked part-time managing my parents' mixed-use complex, Linwood Commons, which is in Linwood Center. It's apartments and some businesses. And I do the accounting there and the leasing and the financing. And so I have some experience in business and I have experience in law. I'm running for council because I think we expected a lot of change when we changed our form of government. That it'd be more focused on serving the community, and I don't think that's happened. And how I feel is I didn't expect the change to be complete at this point. I think it's something that's going to take some time, but I don't feel like some issues have been acknowledged, and so I don't have a lot of confidence that they're going to be fixed. And I think that I could contribute, and I want to help, and I want to help see that change through.
Okay. You know what, I'm going to take the first question, just kind of follow up on that, because I wanted to talk about how the council deals with the city manager. And that was something at the forum a week and a half ago, that I was up. There was a lot of criticism of how this has gone since you changed forms of government. Maybe answer the question that you raised about how you haven't seen change come all the way through. What should be the council's role? What step do you put in so the council can be more proactive about either holding a standard that's higher or ensuring that some of the things that you try to put into the voters want to happen? What's the check that makes sure that happens?
Well, I think the council first needs to decide together, what the standard is. What level of service do we want to provide? I don't think any council has ever done that in our city. I don't want to place blame. I don't put blame on the staff. Because I don't think anyone has ever given them that direction, and this is how our city's always operated. They've come into it. I don't have any hard feelings about it. But I think the first step is you need to have a council that decides that this is our level of service, this is the standard we're going to hold our staff accountable to, and then communicate that to them so they know what is expected.
As a follow-up, what would you ask then? What do you ask your constituents, or is it just what you want to ask yourself?
What do I ask my...
How are you going to find out what the acceptable level of service is? What the people...
Well, you ask the constituents, because we need... That would be, I guess, the second thing. We need some kind of measure of how the community is viewing the level of service and the customer service. Do they feel like they're getting what they pay for? We need some kind of measurement in place to make sure we're meeting it. And I think that the community is who we're serving, so the community needs to be the ones that tell us what they expect.
I would like to start by saying the city manager is probably the best thing that has happened to Bainbridge Island in the last 20 years. She has absolutely turned around the city financially, and she did it with remarkable speed. 3 weeks before the budget last year, she fired the finance director. I didn't have much hope that we would see a viable budget out of the city with that happening. She brought the city down from 152 people, absolutely, totally unsustainable, to 112 people last year. We're down to 111 today. Find any other city manager in anywhere else in the state of Washington that could make that kind of change. Absolutely amazing. So I have great respect for what the city manager has accomplished. But like Sarah said, everything can't be done overnight. She's got some restrictions now that she has to deal with. I think she made an agreement with the union that she would not have any further reductions during the year 2011. We have unions to deal with. She upset a lot of people when she let the number of people go from the city. That's controversial. But she's done an absolutely remarkable job, and I can support her efforts. What's still broken in the city, the biggest things that are broken, are the utilities. I don't know that she's really got on top of that yet. I think she's getting perhaps some not very good advice from some of her staff. Now, what can the city council do? Well, the city council sets policy. So we have to collectively meet and agree in what direction to take the city. We have to agree on what funding levels we want to do, for example, on roads, and then we have to put that into effect. We can probably talk about specific utilities or specific road projects if you'd like. All of them need some fixing. But she's done a magnificent job with the personnel side, and she's done a magnificent job with the financial side.
Sure, I'll follow up on that question since that's something that came up with our other candidate interviews from Bainbridge. Is your opinion on both the water utility and the stormwater utility? Is the city doing a good job with these? Is there something that should change, or should the city look to using KPUD or an outside firm? And we'll let Robert start this question.
Let's take the water utility to begin with. The history of all of the utilities is that when Iman imposed essentially an initiative on Washington voters for a 1% raise, maximum 1% increase in taxes a year, the cities all over across the state of Washington decided we need more money, and one of the ways we're going to get it is we can take some. You can't directly transfer funds from utilities to general funds, but you can pay people, and that's exactly what the city of Bainbridge Island has done. In the budget of 2000, the city manager even wrote into the initial report that if the Iman initiative was approved, our utility rates would jump 23%. There's no logic on doing it other than the fact the city wanted to use that for money. And that trend has continued. The water utility, for example, 2 years ago had 10.3 people assigned, and we're talking about $100,000 a person. That utility actually, we had an auditor in, a consultant. She said we can operate that utility with 3.9 people. That's pretty close. I figured about 4. There's about 3 people out in the field and about 1 person overhead. Plus the city gets a 6% tax rate out of that. The city, the same problem exists with the sewers. Stormwater is probably the worst of all. We have 11.7 people being paid for stormwater, $2.3 million, $10 million in the last 4 years, and we've had no significant capital projects. We're paying people. Mercer Island has exactly the same regulatory requirements on stormwater. They clean up the Lake Washington rather than cleaning up Puget Sound. They have about 5 times the stormwater infrastructure that Bainbridge Island has. We pay 11.7 people, they pay 4.3. That's what's broken in stormwater. The city performs both the water function and the stormwater relatively satisfactorily. KPUD can perform it. They've got a long record of doing good performance. I don't think it's a matter of rates. I look at what the cost structure is, and right now the city will not match KPUD's cost structure. All future rates are driven by cost structure and expenses, and right now I would opt to divest the water utility to KPUD, unless the city can match KPUD's operating cost.
I also would say that it's time for the water utility to go to the KPUD. They can't match not just the cost, but they can't continue to provide the service. They've cut the rates, but when they've cut the rates, they've also cut service, including preventative maintenance. And so it's not just looking at whether or not they're charging the same rate, but what are the ratepayers in this case getting for that rate? And that's, I think, where you see the big difference is that the city cannot provide the same services at the same rate. And as far as managing it goes, what troubles me is that we had to spend $85,000 so someone could tell us that we could reduce the employees to 3.9. Our city manages this utility on a daily basis. They operate it. They've been doing that for a couple of decades now. I just wonder, where's the expertise there? Why do they need to pay somebody to tell them how to run the utility? They had a proposal from KPUD that set the standard. These are the rates and the services we can provide. So they had a target, and they just sat on it, spent the money on a consultant to tell them whether or not they could do it. And I just think that just shows that they cannot manage the utility. They can't. And I think Robert is right. They've used the water fund basically as a float for the general fund. The cost allocation, to all the overhead, and the same thing's happening with the stormwater. And so I think, and Robert's working on this, I believe, to start looking at the stormwater fund and what the city is doing, what they should be doing, and try to get that turned around.
What are you doing with the stormwater? What is she referencing?
Two things. Number one, I've been involved in stormwater for about 4 years. I'm rewriting the stormwater rate structure ordinance for the city. Held 22 meetings, have another one tonight.
The water utility and stormwater share some administrative duties. Is that true or?
Very minimal.
Very minimal. Not like
it's not
accounting, billing, things like that, or?
Well, actually, no billing at all. The stormwater is an assessment, and it's charged to property owners, parcel owners, through the taxes once a year from Kitsap County Treasurer. The other one is a monthly billing, should be bi-monthly, but it's a monthly bill.
Another issue I wanted to ask about, just an opinion. There's a Port of Bainbridge that's up for a vote in the next couple of weeks. One of the things that the proponents are saying is that the city council can't handle the requests that are being made to improve the harbor and other things like that. I'd like to know your opinion on whether you think that the city needs to establish a port district, and if not, where do you think those needs kind of fall as far as the city council priorities should you make it onto the city council? I'll let Sarah go for me.
The port, I was just talking to a proponent the other day, and there's some things that I think are intriguing that they could, improve our road ends. And they could have gotten the DNR lease. We could have had our liveaboards could have stayed for free. But I think what's missing, I think you hear this from a lot of people, is a plan. No one really knows what it is they're going to do, and so it's kind of an unknown. And then there's the issue of additional property taxes. It's difficult. The gentleman I was speaking to is running for port commissioner, and he kept telling me he wouldn't do this and he wouldn't do that, and I realized that maybe he wouldn't. But I want to know what powers the port has, not whether these individual commissioners stand for it. Because we don't know who's going to be on it in the future. And I think that's what's missing for people. I don't think, for me anyway, it's too questionable at this point, and I haven't seen any real solid plan. And there's some answers. I think there's some questions out there that haven't answered about the taxing ability.
Do you think that the requests that are being made is the city council capable of addressing some of those issues, or is it too much on their plate?
I don't think it's capable at this point. I don't know if the park district isn't capable, and that would maybe be an alternative for taking over those duties.
Well, just to keep the record straight, this is a voter decision, not a city council decision,
no,
of course. To begin with, I want to make sure that that's clear. So whatever the voters decide, the city council will.
Right. I'm still asking your opinion on it.
But from the city council perspective, as I see it, first of all, I don't think the city council's overworked. We can make decisions, but we essentially are limited right now financially to about probably a $2 million windfall that we receive from the Washington State ferries. $2 million when you go working on the waterfront really doesn't go very far. You can barely build a city dock for $2 million. So that money is sitting in a reserve fund, and it'll be up to probably the next council. I don't think we're going to get a decision on the current council. Probably up to the next council on whether that money is to be spent or not to be spent, and how it's going to be spent. If a port district is established, I have a sense that the port district will approach the city and ask to have that $2 million transferred to the port district. And there probably could be some logic on why that would happen, but I think there's also going to be some reluctance on the city to give up that $2 million, because right now that's a good part of the city reserves. So that's going to be a problem that we're going to have to address. The city essentially will, with the problems and the staffing size of the city, I see very little that's going to get done in the harbor by the city. Even if the $2 million, the best that could probably happen is something on the city dock. And of course that money was given initially, or the discussions were that that would go for waterfront, some waterfront function. That restriction was removed on the final settlement, and so that money can be used as general fund money anywhere on the island. I think there's an obligation, a moral obligation to use it on the waterfront.
Do you feel that way personally?
I pretty much feel that way myself, yeah. I would listen to other arguments on, or other possible uses of the money. You know, the land, we want to preserve land, and there's pressure to, you know, move it and preserve more land on the island, put it into open space. So I will listen to the discussions. My mind isn't totally made up, but my default position would be to use it on the waterfront. But Bainbridge is not a destination waterfront like Paulsbo. It's not on the route to, say, the San Juan Islands for somebody leaving Seattle. We have one major festival a year. I was up talking to the port of Paulsbo this winter, just to the manager of the port, and with fuel prices being what they are, that port was suffering. And we don't have we probably don't have the character in the city to draw a lot of people into our waterfront. So the fact, you know, it may not be a slam dunk if we build a dock that it's going to be filled up, and it certainly may not be filled up in the winter because it's just not on a travel route for most of the boaters in Puget Sound. So I'll listen. My ears are open. My mind is open.
You're kind of doubting the idea that a port is needed to draw people in or to improve things for an economic development.
I think they're going to have, yeah, I think from the port, they want to do a lot of things besides just a port. I think it might be, you know, moving into the industrial side of the island and some other things. But yeah, I really see the port may face some very difficult drawing customers problems if they do construct something.
Am I correct? Did you give me an answer on whether you're voting for or against this?
I didn't give you an answer, but right now, because I would vote against it, because I haven't seen a plan out of them, and I want to know what they're going to do, and I want to know how much money they're really going to get. 11 cents per thousand isn't going to do much of anything. So I want to see the plan. I want to see more of the finances. And right now, with what I know know some of the people. I don't dismiss the plan. I think it's probably worth putting on the table, but I would vote against it at this point.
Sir, I was going to ask you the question about that $2 million. Do you feel that should the city not establish a port district, it remains in city council's kind of discretion, and they come to the point where they do want to spend the money, do you feel like it must be spent on the waterfront? Is it kind of an open question?
I think it should be. That's what was represented to everyone when the discussions were happening, and I think that was the understanding of the community.
One of the other things that we've been reporting a lot on lately, and this came up in that other debate, is both the Civil Service Commission and this kind of ongoing debate over its role and the examiner's role, and then the broader issue of police accountability and the trust that people have in the department right now with a couple of these incidents. I'd like to know what you feel to be, let's address the kind of the broader question first, is what you think the council can take as a step to help restore some trust in the police department up there, whether it's warranted criticism or not. And we'll start with Rob.
Well, some of this is going to be resolved maybe fairly soon, because we have 5 major litigation cases against the police department right now, and one of them goes to trial Monday, I understand. So we'll see how that works out. There were 6, we're down 1, and so far the police department hasn't been shown to be guilty of anything yet. What can we do? There is a public level of distrust right now with the police department, and whether some of that has been fueled by individuals that may have financial involvement with some of the outcome of these cases. I happen to be pretty active on the...
You mean people who have filed?
People that have filed, yeah. There appears to me in the last week to be quite an intense public relations move on there. They're very smart people. One of the filers is in fact they've made their living, and two of the cases are making their living from actually filing lawsuits against police departments for different malpractices throughout the state of Washington. They've been very successful. That's how they make their living. And I've seen just on the blogs and the distribution lists that we have on the island, a rather concerted attempt in the last 14 days, I guess, to you know, sort of inflame this.
But the issue is deeper than the last 14 days.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, you would agree with that.
Oh, absolutely.
There's a kind of a larger problem with that, as far as just even just as far as a perception.
Yeah, I'm going to the police academy now. I've got some police people in my background, in my family, and I want to say that I feel that there has to be something proven against the police before I'm going to say that the police are totally at fault in any of these cases. There's certainly been, the only case that I can actually really get upset about right now is a hiring of a reserve officer that didn't have the background that he should have had to be hired by the city. But as a police officer, he caused no trouble. It was found out early, and he resigned. But that one bothers me. There's a case where we had an individual shot on the island, mentally disturbed individual. There's some questions about how that was handled. I think that if you read the prosecutor's memo on the 20th of January that talked about some of the charges that the public are making against that, he pretty well said that, you know, this isn't the same story that's being reported by a lot of the anonymous people that are posting about this. I'm not sure I'm getting to.
Yeah, I guess maybe to press on my question more then, sure, is you're correct. You know, we do our job as a newspaper the best to report what has happened in the Osling cases. You said we even put the documents on our website.
Absolutely.
But like you're saying, there still is this thing in the community that people, that's what they.
It's huge. Yeah.
What does the city council do to say, folks, this is a good look at our police department, whether that's something that needs to be fixed, whether things are fine and it's being overblown? I don't know what I don't know what that is. But that's what I'm asking. That's what I'm trying to get.
Well, should I continue, or?
If you'd like to answer that part of the question, then we'll let.
I'll do a quick one. Yeah. Interesting story in the Spokane paper where they've got the same problem with police shootings over there, and they wanted to put an ombudsman as a overseer of the police department. That was Mayor Werner has problems with that by the fact that that has to be negotiated with the union. The union does not want police oversight. That's one more layer of looking at the kind of work that they do, and we haven't even had that discussion yet. So I think we need oversight right now, and I think that we have to do that by probably cooperating with the police union on what is an acceptable oversight policy for the police department. But I think to restore public confidence, first of all, I think the lawsuits may tell us something as they work their way through the courts. And second of all, we need to work on establishing something where the public has some confidence that there's oversight other than perhaps the city or the Civil Service Commission enforces civil service rules. They're not an oversight committee responsible for oversight of the police. So we don't have an oversight committee right now or individual, and that probably needs to be established, and it needs to be established so that the union can live with it.
Okay, thank you. That's.
They go the way of oversight. I think it's really important that it's independent. I think that that's one of the things that's bothering a lot of the community, is they feel things are being brought in-house and being done behind closed doors. And whether any wrongdoing is actually occurring, that's the perception. I also think that there needs to be a place for citizens to go, and when they have concerns about the police, there really, we have we don't, I think we used to go to our community relations committee, which we don't have anymore. I don't think people are comfortable going to our city manager. I think right now people feel like our council members aren't listening to their concerns. I think they need to establish some kind of procedure that citizens can rely on to go with their concerns and their complaints. As far as restoring trust.
Can I ask one question before you do on this part?
Sure.
Do you feel that the Civil Service Commission and the examiner was a place that is appropriate to be responsible in that role?
No, they're really limited to employment issues.
Okay.
And I think there needs to be something outside of that. That may have started to become one of their roles, but I don't think that's the proper role. It's a difficult question, I think, because, as Robert stated, there's a lot of allegations, a little short on facts. There's, we don't know what's being discussed in executive session. So, from my perspective as a citizen, I think to restore trust, there needs to be something pretty big. I don't have faith right now in the people who are managing our police department. There are officers. This came up at a ward meeting when they're talking about a community resource officer to try to better the relationship with the community and police officers. And I tried to make the point, because this is something that, when I was a teenager in high school was going on. There's always tension between, especially, teenagers and the police. And it's not the police department, though. I think there are many times individual officers that cause a problem. But I go back to the management, because it's the management's job, it's our chief's job to set the stage, set the standard, and set the expectations of how our officers are to behave, how to operate, how to communicate with our public. And right now, I personally do not have faith that the management that's in place for the police force can do that job.
How would that improve? How would you improve that faith? Or what steps should the city council be looking into?
There needs to be something. I don't know if we need a new chief. He's not, I don't know. I was really surprised when they did the frequently asked questions on the city's website about the Civil Service Commission and the reserve officers, that they are now making sure that the chief will review the records of reserve officers. It didn't surprise me that our city manager wasn't doing that, but I was really surprised that our police chief was not reviewing the records of our reserve officers. I wonder, I don't feel like there's a lot of management going on, and I don't know if we just need someone new. It may just be that.
Well, there's one reserve officer actually in question, and it might be a timing issue, because our chief of police was back at the FBI Academy for 10 weeks during that period of time, and I don't know the timing of when that reserve officer was selected, but he may not have even been at the city at that time. He may have been on the East Coast. So I'm going to, rather than point a finger at the chief, I think we have to probably both say, we haven't seen the timing of when that officer was selected.
He was physically alive.
Well, that should be made clear, because the way it's written out is that is not the policy now, whether he's present or not. That was not the policy. Now it is the policy.
Questions? Ask something here. The other one that comes up very commonly, and Robert spoke of this earlier, was the issue of roads on the island and what's to be done. There's, I believe it was 4 miles of road that were actually taken care of in the past year through the city general fund budget for that. And the way things are these days, that's a very slow pace to get to solve this issue. So, if you're elected, where do you put that on the city council's priority list, and how do you accomplish maybe some progress there?
It needs to be a high priority because every year that the maintenance is put off, the cost, the repairs and maintenance just continues to climb. I think that how we're going to fix it is we need to look at the way our city operates. As I said before, with the water, cutting expenses, and cutting services with it. And I think that now that we have some reserves in place, we bought ourselves a little bit of time. Now let's dig deeper and look at the way we operate, and look at the services we provide. How much does it cost to provide an individual service? How much is it costing us to mow the roads, to clean the culverts? Those kinds of different jobs, and look at what other providers can do it for. And if they're doing it for less, we need to figure out how we can improve our cost effectiveness. And if we can't, then we have to consider contracting it out. And then the other issue is our salaries. We have very high salaries, and our benefits. Our benefit ratio is 40%. It was 25% in 2001. That's going to take some negotiating with the union, of course. But I think that the way we get to the roads is looking at our operations, increasing our efficiency, so we have some funds that we can redirect to those capital projects and maintenance.
Would you ever be in favor of considering a car tab fee, or even letting the voters vote on something?
This was asked at the forum, and
I think it was me that
yeah. At this point, no, because I don't. When you're paying a tax, you're paying a rate, you deserve to get something of value for what you're paying, and I don't think we are right now. And when I see something better coming out of City Hall, then I would consider it. But at this point, I don't think that just increasing the car tab is going to fix what the underlying problem is.
Roads would become the subject of a January study session by the City Council if I'm elected and I would get on the council. The council has a retreat as soon as the new council meets, and that would be right at the top of my list. We get about $2.8 million a year in the roads fund. It takes about $1 million to fill the potholes and keep the signs up and do all the things that you got to do with roads. That leaves about $1.8 million to pay engineers and people and consultants and do all the other things, including capital projects. The city has only been using about $400,000 of that for capital projects, and they only did that in this past year. They ignored the previous 3 years. The city manager bumped that up to $600,000 the other night. That's a little bit of progress, but we can probably get, I think we can get about $1 million out of that fund to work on roads now. But we need a major summit on roads, because we haven't even got to the point of, do we pave roads or do we chip seal roads? Paved roads last twice as long as chip seal. We haven't, the city council, this is blue collar stuff, and the city council doesn't get into this stuff. But if you pave roads, for example, Mercer Island does no chip sealing whatsoever. Now we're a little bit different because we have about 142 miles of road over on Bainbridge Island, and and we don't have as many, our density is a little less, so chip sealing probably makes sense, and there's probably some combination of paving and chip sealing that would make sense for the island. We have a lot of roads along the water, the edges of water. If you look at the new stormwater rules that are coming down the pike, and I go to a lot of, I'm a regular attendee at stormwater summits and involved in writing the new stormwater rules for the state. Those roads should probably be considered for pervious pavement, where the water actually goes through the roadway, rather than having the water, the oils and all that go straight off into the sound. And we have a number of miles of those on the island. So the bottom line is let me take one other example. When you pave roads, for example, it takes about 12 pieces of major equipment. One of the most expensive parts of doing roads is mobilizing to get it done. So the question is, do you do 4 miles of road a year, or do you save up money, or do a bond and maybe do 15 or 20 miles of road all at once? Because the expense is to move all of that equipment over to the island to get it done. The city doesn't pave roads, so we contract all of that out. So we need to do kind of we need to take some examples from other cities and say, what's the really effective way to do this so that we can get these roads fixed? The roads that we worked on this year there was only one road that was really that had structural problems. We've got a lot of roads that have structural problems that are not just going to be a chip seal or a pave over. We're actually going to have to go in and do some some substantial base work at the roads. Toe Jam Hill, for example, the top of Fort Ward. Just we got tree roots coming up through roads over on the Madison area. You know, we probably need a full day for the city council to have people from Public Works come in, explain their projects, and to be able to get up enough to understand the policies and the trade-offs that we can put an intelligent road project together for the island. This is not something that's real simple. It's not something that's going to be done on a little 2-hour study session at the council. You know, sometime in January. This is a big time endeavor, and we need to, you know, put enough time and effort into it to understand it.
For our last question of the afternoon, I was just going to ask you both to close. If there's anything we've missed or you wanted to make a statement on, feel free to do so now. One thing we always ask as far as your last statement is try to tell us something, separate you from your opponent. What do you think that you bring to the council, or would you bring to the council that your opponent does not? And we'll let Robert go first, and we'll let Sarah have the last statement.
Okay. We differ by the fact that I've lived in 22 areas, or 22 different locations in my life. Sarah's lived in one. I think a world view on some of the things that affect small cities can be a valuable perspective. I'm a photographer. I love to go to little cities in the state of Washington. I love to shoot public art. When I walk into a city like Leavenworth, I was up there last year, I ran into the mayor at 6 o'clock in the morning. They were cleaning the streets, and I got a discussion on how they keep these magnificent flower baskets alive, what they do, how they prepare for tourists. And I'll walk into a town and walk into City Hall and see if there's somebody there, planning director or something, that'll walk around and talk to the good things or the bad things that the town has done. So I've always been interested in cities and how they work, and I think I would bring that to this council. That said, I've been on Bainbridge Island long enough. I've been to 400 or 500 city meetings. I sit and listen. I understand what works, and I know all the city councilors. I have coffee with most of them. I look on this as politics. One of the things that disturb me is on the city council, we have a long history of sort of not getting along with each other. It can be very contentious. There's 7 people that are elected essentially at random that, you know, have different egos and different agendas. You never know how it's going to work when you get them all together, and historically they seem to become a little bit polarized. I'm the kind of person that, you know, you go and you do your preparations, you work hard, you do the study and research, you come to the meetings prepared, you argue your case, you're a proponent. If you can't get 3 other people to agree with you, fine. You pat them on the back, you go out and have coffee with them the next morning and just smile and say, it's politics, you know, life goes on, it's not the most important thing in the world. So I want to get away from the bickering of the city council. I think that's destructive. I think people look on that as, as being not very professional. So you're not always going to get your way. No man gets his way in all matters, and so be it. Just go and do the best job you can. Use your life experiences and make the best decisions possible.
So are we doing a closing statement, or did you
Yes,
say
yes,
you wanted
that's
to
what I'd like to do.
address something that hasn't been asked? Or I thought you said both.
Your closing statement is
Okay.
your opportunity to do that.
Okay. Well, I would say quickly that I agree with Robert that it's really important the council gets along. I think when you have a divided council, you have a divided community. And what I don't see happening a lot right now is when there is, some division on an issue, I don't see the back and forth, what do you not like about it? What could we change that would make you comfortable with it? I don't see that back and forth, I don't see a real attempt to reach a consensus right now. And that's something that I would do. I think it's really important. Because I really think the council, they're kind of on the forefront and they set the tone for what's going on in our community. I did want to talk a little bit about economic development because I'm kind of surprised that that question hasn't come up in the forums. So I just want to say, I guess kind of quickly, I don't think that economic development is what's going to save the city, the finances, but I guess it's, the fact that the question hasn't come up kind of shows I think our business community feels a little ignored by City Hall, and I think that's something that I would want to help change. They, you have people who are, pro, environment, trees, agriculture, affordable housing. They there's someone that can kind of get their ear on City Council, and there doesn't really seem to be that representation for our business community. And I think that it's important that we at least open up a discussion, conversation with the business community to find out, what are your ideas? What could the city do to help you? Maybe the city can't do what they ask, but I think it's important that that conversation at least happens. Because I think it's important for us to maintain some kind of, sustainable economic base. And I don't think that there's really any attention paid to it right now.
Well, thank you guys.